Well, Christopher Nolan's personal interpretation of the Odyssey is out. Man, this movie went through a fair bit of controversy, didn't it? Quite the casting choices for Greek mythology epic. But now that it is out, how is the actual movie? Well, I said Christopher Nolan's personal interpretation because that's what it is. This is not an adaptation of Homer's Odyssey or a direct adaptation of other people's interpretations. This is Nolan's take with inspiration from others, like Emily Wilson. It has the same characters with a couple exceptions and same basic plot points with a couple exceptions. But the overall kinds of themes and takeaways that are the most prominent in the original Odyssey have been changed or downplayed at least. While the original Odyssey is more about Odysseus's hubris and thinking he's the smartest person even than that of the gods, only to play the fuck around and find out game for years while trying to get home, this version is more about PTSD and how breaking the conventions of war can have worldwide consequences. Homer did have some of that PTSD changing of war. This is how, glorifying war to what it really is. Some of the messaging is, in fact, in there. And this movie does do things about his hubris and not really wanting to accept the gods and then getting their help and things like that. But the balance is different. The hubris stuff is not the focus of Nolan's, and the cause and effect of war and PTSD is not the main thing for Homer. And I'm not going to break down the story of the Odyssey since it is one of the most well known stories in the world. So instead, I'm going to kind of go over a set of questions I feel some people might ask about this movie. Starting with no, not really. The biggest history buffs will laugh in your face and spit in your cereal for claiming this movie to be any sort of historically accurate. The armor, the dilapidated, already ruined buildings, how dark the filters are making everything look drab, all the diverse and ethnicity running all around in the crews and the towns, and some of the manor laws are all very inaccurate. I don't know if they're historically accurate, but I did really like the boats. Well, probably, not that accurate, and they do look kind of very liking more than a Greek vibe. Those did make me very happy, and it was nice that you could see and feel that they were real boats that they actually put to sea. That was awesome. But this is not a movie that you can say, hey, watch this, and you will see what it was like and get a vibe for what it could have been like in ancient Greece. But did that truly affect the story and the quality of the film? A bit. But also, in the grand scheme of things, probably not, no. The major problems of this film is with the script. Elliot Page is not Achilles. Matter of fact, Achilles is not even in this version of Odyssey at all, which I find to be a problem. It is a problem if you're trying to tell the original story of the Odyssey and have Achilles talk to Odysseus about what death is like for a famous warrior. But then again, it kind of isn't that big of a problem for Nolan's Odyssey, about the cost of war. While Elliot Page is not directly Achilles in this movie, it does take the place of two characters and kind of adds a third in, since the character Elliot is playing is a character from a different story from the Odyssey altogether. Elliot Page plays Sinon, who is a Greek spy character from the, and I'm going to butcher a lot of names in this video, I'm sorry, the Aeneid. It's the story about how the fleeing Trojans go and eventually settle and find Rome. In this movie, Sinon is not a spy and serves more as a catalyst for Odysseus' vengeance and telling him and having him understand the horrors of war and kind of becoming the main face of the men that he didn't really honor in their death. So Sinon kind of, absorbed the role of Achilles and Elpenor in the original Odyssey. As both the greatest warrior Odysseus has ever known. Yes, he says that in the movie. And also by being the soldier that Odysseus encounters in hell that tells him about the importance of proper burials and honoring the dead and where the sacrifices go and how all of that works and how there's like a limbo between earth and Hades that they can be trapped in. That was the role that Elpenor was in the original book. And so while Sinon does not have a large amount of screen time, the character is one of the most important to Nolan's version of the story. And yeah, the weight of the story being on Elliot's non existent freak shoulders is very awkward. Yeah, not looking too masculine and menacing in the armor, Elliot. Sinon, in this movie, is a soldier that is left behind with the Trojan horse in order to just tell the Trojans, I promise this isn't a trick, and then to be killed. Only be seen in hell to call Odysseus an asshole for not letting him in on the plan about being in the horse, and also to tell him about how Antinous is a liar and trying to marry his wife and take his throne. Yeah, I don't really know why Christopher Nolan felt like the Trojans couldn't come up with, excuse to take the Trojan horse into the city. Yeah, no, you need Elliot Page there to go, take it. It's a gift. Take it. Yeah, it seems unnecessary. Xenon to me is a big mistake and just a stupid way to reduce the cast to keep some beats of the story, and also is there to help change the narrative to this new PTSD arc. Achilles is just as famous as Odysseus, and him being the one to tell Odysseus about his experience with death and how it is and some of his regrets as being such a great warrior and everything was actually impactful and meaningful in the original story. It's someone Odysseus could like respect and understand, and it coming from him held a lot more weight. And then Elpenor, wow, not really in a character in the original story. It was him that taught Odysseus about what consequences his rushing home and defiance of the gods is having to others, not just him. So now you got Sinon doing both of those while also laying the seeds for this new story about Odysseus wanting vengeance on Continuous, especially for being a conniving, sneaky little man that made Sinon go to war in his place. At like helping fuel Odysseus's vengeance and wanting to go home and kill all the suitors. And the main thing I didn't like from that whole edition and takeaway is taking away Achilles' agency. I do like the idea of adding more character to Elpenor, maybe see him as one of the crew, see he was like in the war. That was all seems like a pretty decent idea. And that would make the not doing a proper burial only to have him be like trapped in a shitty limbo hellscape thing would then hit harder. But you didn't need to just be like wiped away to become Sinon because they wanted a sacrificial lamb that freaking told the Trojans to take the horse and do all this betrayal stuff. Like you could have had Elpenor was tricked by Antinous, and then that helped gave a little more depth to the Vengeance on Suitor stuff. Like you still could have had all of that in there by giving Elpenor more character and him having still been part of the journey and still being drunk and falling off the house at Cersei's house. But no, you just had to do Elliot Page made sure the horse got into the city. Again, that addition was not needed for the original Odyssey. And I can see how it was needed for Nolan's Odyssey, but I think you could still made it work where it wasn't that, and again, have it be Elpenor. And then there's Elliot Page, who just did nothing really in terms of performance. Nothing to make me go, oh yeah, controversy be damn. She absolutely should have been cast for that. She was nailed it. Only one who could possibly do it. No. No. And then Helen of Troy wasn't in this movie very much. And with there being lots of diversity interjected with amongst the crew and people in backgrounds and some of the suitors, her being African American, while not accurate, does not make the world of the movie feel off. Again, it was advertised as highly accurate to Greek mythology and life in Greece back then. You wouldn't get that. You don't get that vibe. If you have to turn your brain off to go, this is just Nolan's own weird world where an Odyssey is happening, it's fine. But to me, still, and this is a very subjective opinion, that's not a face to launch 1,000 ships.
I say, hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right.
The biggest thing that they have in this movie with Helen of Troy is they have Helen's sister Clytemnestra, be her twin. Now, this is not a Nolan original idea. It is something that has been kind of brought up on other stories and kind of plays and things around Helen. You know, her having a twin sister because they were born from an egg after Zeus fucked their mom while being a swan. Love Greek mythology. But Homer never said they were twins. In the original Odyssey, I haven't read every interpretation. I think most people agree they aren't twins. Which, in all that, to me, makes more sense. Because if Helen does have a twin, then she's not a one-in-a-lifetime beauty. She is not someone just so magnificently spectacular that such a large world-changing war would be going on about her.
This is my twin sister. Her name, fuck you.
Yeah, only two. Yeah, so instead of one, there's two. Big deal. Yeah, it is because it's diminishing her. It just means that she's not as unique as you would think someone whose beauty could cause so much death and fuss over her could be. Also, they make Helen like a little bit angry and bitter and being mistreated and beaten by Menelaus. You know, so she becomes more feminist, a little more feminist Helen, and girl power, which is a change from the book. You know, Helen had the spell of Aphrodite broken off of her. She was genuinely mournful of the war and actually loved her husband and was still a great beauty that many people would go when hearing the stories, look at her and go, oh yeah, I get it. She didn't become a bitter, beaten woman who is sorry for the war, but also fuck them men kind of thing. Yes and no. You know what? I'm not really sure, to be honest. And that's a weird thing to say, because I saw the movie. I think there's some interpretation for that, for the audience's part. So there is no direct God interactions.
God will make you pay. Smite them!
Except for stuff with Athena, played by Zendaya.
He's a cooking something up.
Who did fine, I guess. I mean, she really didn't have much to do with the story. Didn't really have many lines. Able to do a good emotional face. Kind of was all wrapped up in mysterious, almost like Dune vibes off her. But anyways, and this is a very big spoiler. During the fall of Troy, there is a girl who gets beheaded at like the exact same time an Athena statue gets its head chopped off. That girl is Zendaya. So Athena is showing herself as this non-corporeal form and vision that only Odysseus can see and hear.
Barney, he's the guy who tipped me off to Pepe Sylvia. Barney? Who the hell is Barney? You don't see Oh, shit. What the hell did he... You've lost your mind. You've lost your goddamn mind, Charlie.
Of this girl that got beheaded. It's like a symbol of his grief haunting him. And when he finally kind of comes to terms with everything he's done and how the world is changing and accepting some more of like God intervention, she vanishes. She does do some dialogue and stuff, asking why he thinks he's better and more knowing than the gods and stuff. But I really don't know if she was really Athena or just like PTSD hallucination kind of thing. However, we do get the Cyclops, who doesn't really talk, just kind of attacks and eats, and yeah, very lackluster scene with all that. Looking forward to it. Just kind of horror scene. And then we have Cersei. Very body horror creepy scene. And Cersei just hates men. Just hates men. He sees the men are perfectly nice to her. But she just hates men because other ones have come from the sea and were mean to her. So she just turns them into animals and hates men. But she is magic, and the animal stuff is there, and it's gruesome. Oh, yeah, we also got the Sirens, whose song you don't hear, because I guess it's really hard to come up with a song that will make you go that crazy.
A heavenly voice and a beautiful personality.
Absolutely.
And there's a version of the Lestriogians. I'm so good at talking. Those are those ironclad giants that you see in the trailer, and they don't throw rocks. They just kind of tear some boats apart and have changing force and awkward stabbing. That was kind of funny to see. Charybdis, the whirlpool, was fine and good. And Celia, again, looked fine and was a six-headed snake thing. So yeah, those fantasy elements. And the dead did come up from hell. And we do have Calypso, who, although I don't think is a magical immortal nymph, it was never stated, said, or showed any sort of magical stuff. And we don't have the Lotus Eaters, which is a big void in the movie. But don't worry, they do have a lotus. And then instead of the Lotus Eaters, they have Calypso, who uses the lotus to keep Odysseus with her, and all drugged up and horned up and forgetting who he is and about his wife. I made up horned up. They actually don't even like kiss or do anything in her rundown beach stick hut ruins non-oasis island. She just loves him and keeps him drugged so he doesn't remember who he is. So it seems the gods of magic do exist. Or it was all PTSD and Lotus drug-enabled dreams? I don't know. But all the, like, direct god intervention that were not storms are scrapped from the story in Nolan's version. The gods don't fight amongst themselves. They don't do this whole thing where they've decided to become less involved with mankind or any of that shit. They don't walk around in the skies as none of that. It's just storms and then whatever the fuck Athena was. So yeah, I don't know. There's elements. So yes, there were elements. Were they the gods and actual fantastical things? Don't know. Even the beginning of the words of in a time when magic seemed to have exist or people thought magic exists. Nothing. Don't know. There isn't a lot of action. And the actual action is not that inspiring or overly cool. Against normal people, Odysseus is, kind of John Wicky.
Facial recognition got a hit.
Jesus Christ, that's Jason Bourne.
Except for he does struggle at points with the suitors. But other than that, he's pretty much useless against all the fantastical elements. That's fine. You don't really expect him to be able to go toe-to-toe with giants. In this movie, Odysseus is most formidable as an archer. And man, does this film make archery look super easy. And that bows are very easy to draw back. And aiming is just like a formality. As someone who has tried his hand at more traditional archery, that did kind of really annoy me. All the actors just look so silly shooting a bow. But action is not really what you expect from the Odyssey. You want Odysseus being clever. You want him trying to outsmart the gods themselves, coming up with great plans to escape. All of these mystical people falling to his ideas and whims and things. And all of that stuff to try to help him get home. But the Odysseus we get in this movie does not really seem like the kind of man that could come up with the idea of the Trojan horse. He doesn't seem overly clever. It's more just lucky and confident. These characters are kind of mostly in common with just having the same name as the characters in the Odyssey. Again, Odysseus is more seat of his pants, lucky yet competent and confident, more than truly being a very clever, seasoned warrior and generally good king and leader. So, like, right-hand man Eurylochus is, like, just as competent and isn't this think he's clever but really kind of an idiot person and rival and mutineer in this movie. He's just kind of like one of the bros who totally believes in the gods, right up until he doesn't for the sake of the story and plot. While Odysseus is kind of like agnostic about the gods and everything, kind of all the way up until the end. And Odysseus doesn't really seem to want to come home in the movies. And he does kind of say that, and it's when he gets his mind back from Charlize Theron's Calypso is when he goes, now that I've started to cope with my PTSD drama, I want to go home. And he tells Penelope and other characters multiple times in this movie that Penelope should just remarry. It really seemed like he couldn't have given a fuck about the others trying to bang his wife and take his kingdom. It was more Elliot Page saying Antinous is betraying you at home is what makes him really kind of want to go back and get vengeance. Yeah, he really wanted to avenge where the fuck this is. That the greatest soldier in the world deserved vengeance for a coward not wanting to go to war. Because Antinous in this movie is more of a slippery, schemy coward who can't get his hands dirty himself. He still hits a lot of the same beats as Antinous from Homer's version, but Nolan has him more like a man-child weasel. And he kind of needed that addition to make the whole Elliot Page storyline work. It's the fact that he has this air of pompous incapability, but he's always kind of like worm-tonguing his way and using speech to get his wants, and other people do his building. He's not a fighter. And Patterson did fine, and you really wanted him dead at the end. But Antinous' like sidekick, other suitor dude who gets killed first with an arrow in the neck is more like Antinous from the books than Robert Pattinson is in this movie. And that guy even dies in the same order and way as in Homer's version. Antinous is supposed to die first with an arrow to the neck. But that doesn't really work in this movie, where he needs to have him constantly shoving soldiers at weapons, going, grab the sword and get him, go use the shield, I'll do all this stuff, and not being part of the fight at all.
Get the spears, you guys! Get the shields, you guys! Come on, get them! Where are the swords? Get the swords!
maybe he won't see me.
And there's Penelope. She is in this movie a lot more than she's in Homer's book. And you can see the Emily Wilson translation inspiration in her. Again, the performance was good, and Penelope did love her husband and was desperate for his return. The end part where she's issuing the challenge with the bow was her best part. Anne Hathaway nailed it. But throughout the film, when she's having scenes with other guys, and Tom Holland and Robert Pattinson, she would just randomly going from like steadfast, normal, noble wife to like feminist, hate men and kings, and talking about her son trying to steal the throne from her, and all these men are different with those whiskers and their big dick competitions. And all this shit just kind of out of nowhere. Like, the feminist switch just turned on, and then she would scream, "I want Odysseus," and leave. It was really jarring sometimes, and it was just like, who the fuck is this character out of nowhere?
Well, you think you're pretty special waltzing in here with your technicality and your little penis.
You keep mentioning the size of...
I don't want you here, Smith!
Telemachus was pretty much the same from the book. His journey and all he meets and brings back was cut down and changed a bit. And there was no real god interaction or intervention stuff. It was actually Odysseus that would saved him from the trap. But for the most part, the like young pup who branches out to try to see what happened to his father, who comes back and is a little more able and competent and standing on his own feet at the end, is still there. And Tom Holland does do a pretty good job. Famous is in this a lot. You know, like the blind farmer guy. He's in a lot more than the original story. And I didn't mind that. He had some good addition to stuff, and there was nothing that really like broke his character or took the spirit of who he was away from the original book. But honestly, most of the characters are pretty shallow in comparison to like the original Homer text. And some actions didn't make sense, and the dialogue was really bad sometimes. It would go from kind of like highbrow poem speak to really straightforward, in your face, do you get it modern language, and sentences sometimes felt disjointed. There was a random just saying fuck that never saying fuck again, and sentences just fell away. Subjects would just change randomly and be sudden and jarring, and I never felt bored or unengaged. I was just mostly going, what are they gonna do about that part? And thinking more about the future of the movie more than being sucked into what was happening now and what they were saying. And the characters and being like, ooh, yeah. But Nolan has never really been that great at characters and dialogue. But this movie was pretty rough. And now this rant doesn't really fit in this section, but I couldn't think of a good way to prop it up, so here we go. A major part of this movie, another like linchpin part, has to do with Zeus's law. This is a law of hospitality boiled down to essentially the statement of, you don't know if someone is a god in disguise, so treat everyone with respect. But this movie, well, pretty much saying that's what Zeus's law is, also just kind of leaves it more as a blank slate to mean whatever the story means it to mean. It isn't really a hard, steadfast, clear guideline rule. It can mean, come in my home and my wife and burn my food all you want. It's all good, buddy. Or it could mean more like, I'm obliged to feed and house you for a night and then send you on your way, but don't you dare steal from me or abuse my hospitality. The suitors in the original Odyssey broke the hospitality laws a lot. It is part of why Odysseus killed every single last one of them, which he didn't do in the movie. He spared whoever bent the knee. Why would you do that? They've already betrayed you when they thought you were dead. What makes you think they wouldn't do it again if you actually did die? You can't trust them. But in this movie, while the suitors still do all the shitty things that they do in the books, the movie says, yeah, no, they're fine. Zeus's law, they can do all that shit all they want, and if you kill them, you must be exiled. So this movie has Odysseus, like, deciding to give up his throne to make it so his son can have it by being the only one to fight the suitors and then take Penelope away from Ithaca. He just got there. Odysseus really likes Ithaca. He does the go back out stuff and to help honor the dead before he gets home. That's part of why it took so long. But no, this is he says, fuck the throne. I just want my wife. Son, you can have it. Get the fuck out to go honor the people. I got PTSD. That is not how it's supposed to work. Odysseus doesn't just not give a fuck about a king anymore. But again, that's in the original Odyssey. It does kind of work in this movie, except for the fact that it's not really clear exactly what Zeus's law is. I liked going and seeing an epic again. I'm so happy it wasn't a Marvel movie or some shit. I love the cinematography and the very, very little use of CGI. I would say theaters probably help with audio and understanding all the dialogue. It isn't the best mixing. I don't think the price for, the higher aspect ratio of IMAX is really enough. This movie might benefit a little bit from being able to pause, go to the bathroom, rewind. If you have your friend or your wife or someone there, talk to them about what just happened and stuff. Modern TVs can make movies look really, really good at home. I don't think there's really that much of a visual upgrade you're getting. You're just getting to see more from aspect ratio. But so I don't think this is really worth you driving to like a real legit IMAX theater to watch it kind of movie. I think this movie, if you do not know the Odyssey, you're probably going to think is just okay. There are problems, and I think it could be hard to engage with for some people. Chauncey and I did have some people falling asleep around us in the theater. If you know the Odyssey, and, a tepid love and respect for Greek mythology, maybe you've heard of it and don't really give a fuck, and then it will still just be kind of okay. People who like, oh man, I really like Greek mythology. I know the Odyssey pretty well. Not a huge, I don't know all the nitty gritty history shit with armor and stuff, but like I know what the Odyssey is supposed to be. I think you're not gonna like this movie very much. This movie really only works as its own movie that Nolan wants it to be. It does not really work as the story of the Odyssey. There's enough changes to characters and events to make you go, this is the Odyssey really only in name. I personally don't think I will ever watch it again. If you want a really good, easy to digest version of the Odyssey that combines some more inspiration than just Homer's work and like kind of fleds out some other works about how Troy affected other people and everything else doing, and makes the dialogue a little more modern and easy to digest and understand, then listen and or read Stephen Fry's interpretation. I really enjoyed all of his Greek mythology books. But yeah, I really have kind of mixed feelings about this movie. I wasn't bored or anything, again, and I liked performances and it looked beautiful. There's a lot of interesting ideas put forth and directions taken that I was like, okay, I can kind of see why you did that. The people of the ocean and breaking the normal rules of war to cause a new, more uncivilized times of fighting to start things was interesting. Like, I still don't know if Odysseus was the people of the sea, or like some of the people from the sea, or he was the one that just kind of kick started all that, and it was other people from the sea that was all rumored about and made people kind of hostile and not really manners and forthcoming. I don't know. And honestly, at this point, I don't think I care enough to really rewatch the movie and see if I can pick up on all that stuff better. This movie is not like Troy, where there's problems, but it's saved with some kind of fun characters and looks and a really awesome Hector and Achilles fight. This movie, I don't know. I don't think this movie will really leave a mark or get a cult following. Nolan Bros will love it, and it will probably win awards and do well in the box office, which is kind of worrying if you want things to be more on the historically accurate side, because if it does well, then they now have a great foot in the door to make diverse casting all you want. And if diversity's for the sake of a good story or good actors and not for diversity's sake, I'm fine with it. But if it's interjected for the wrong reasons and messaging, it's a slippery slope and it's not something I really want to see. But as for the movie itself, I think the most you'll get for like a legacy of this movie is that people are gonna go, "Oh yeah, yeah, I saw it. I thought it was all right. I haven't watched it since though."